Alrighty! For those of you who are watching, thank you so much. I am the camera girl right here, and welcome to CheesePress.
I love that there were, like, spirit fingers involved in that, and nobody could see it. Like, you could hear it. You could hear the spirit fingers, but nobody could see that. That was fabulous.
So we're live.
We're live!
So, I am Miss Andrea.
And I'm Miss Mare.
And we are CheesePress.
Oh, you gotta do it, Mary. You gotta do it. Yes!
Yeah.
Okay.
We are CheesePress Publishing, or CheesePressEducation.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually now our second live stream.
On our channel.
Mm-hmm. We, a couple weeks ago, we were invited as a guest to Shalance's channel. And so we launched our own channel, and we did do a live stream last week, and we forgot to save it.
Wah, wah.
So here we are. We're going to actually cover the same stuff that we did last week because we would like to have that and keep it for posterity. And so here we are.
Okay, so this is take 2 of our introduction. And so at CheesePress Publishing, we create educational curriculum and content. Most specifically, or beginning with history. These are the first 3 of 7 books.
8.
This is the first 3 of 8 books of our ancient history curriculum. We should be done getting them all published by February.
That is the goal.
This first one is very much a standalone because it teaches you how to teach and study history.
Exactly. So it's an introduction, it's a primer. So once we do ancient history, well, should we explain our approach to history before talking about the books themselves?
Yeah.
Knock it out.
Okay, so backing up a little bit, we started a publishing company because we also happen to have an educational nonprofit.
Right.
It's an alternative educational program. Predominantly, we serve homeschool families. And when we started teaching, it was our goal to get these kids ready for college. Our focus in our program is to make certain that everybody who comes through is college ready, whether they're going to college or not.
Right.
Because we know plenty of kids who graduate and 2 years down the road, 4 years down the road, oh, hey, I think I might like to go to college.
Right.
Well, if you've missed things, if you have holes that colleges are going to expect you to know, it makes it that much harder to get into college. Mm-hmm. And so it is And
homeschoolers are just real good for knowing what they want and then changing.
Right?
Changing that. And so we want to make sure that any child that we've touched, any child that we've said, you're done homeschooling,
they still have
is going to be ready
paths
for college whenever they decide to.
Yeah, you have all the paths open to you. And it's funny, that's the way that we started when we started this program 5 years ago. In fact, we began the very first year we taught American history because we had 2 young men who were pretty much done. They were about to graduate, and American history was a hole that they had on their portfolios.
Right.
And so that's where we started, was teaching American history. And so this has been our philosophy from day one, starting 5 years ago. And funny enough, I have 2 children. My oldest is now 18. He graduated last May. And his entire youth was spent saying, I'm not going to college. I don't need to know these things. Why do I have to learn all this stuff? I'm never going to college. It's expensive. It's a waste of time. Why would I ever want to do that? Mm-hmm. And what do y'all think we're doing right at this very moment?
Finishing his applications.
Mm-hmm.
So
going on college tours, visiting campuses. We are doing a gap year because it was not until the summer after he graduated that he participated in a program where he had every intention of pursuing professional development with that organization. And they looked at him and they're like, oh, you're so cute. We love you. We'd love to have you. We only audition students with bachelor's degrees.
So they basically said, see you in 4 years.
Yes, that's exactly what they said this summer. And then all of a sudden, now we want to go to college. So
fortunately, we educated him well.
We did, and he's ready, and he's prepared, despite any grumblings that he may have had throughout his high school career. He's good to go because that's our philosophy.
Right.
And so we started with history because that's an area where we knew that there might be holes, that there might need.
Most specifically, in my experience as a homeschool guidance counselor for the last, I don't even know how many years, probably 15, I was finding that local colleges were letting homeschoolers in, but they were making them take entry-level history classes and not giving them credit for it because they were under the assumption that these kids had never formally studied history, so they were penalizing them.
Right.
And so that's why I wanted to start with history.
And so our goal, we had no intention of reinventing the wheel. We were going to find a great curriculum that we could teach, and we were just going to use that.
Didn't exist.
It didn't exist. It didn't exist. We also do firmly believe in the classical model of studying history, and what that means is that world history is taught over a 4-year cycle. So this year we're teaching ancient history. Next year will be medieval, then it'll be early modern, and then it'll be modern. And so as we looked for a curriculum that could teach over the 4 years, we ran into a few challenges. Traditional schooling does not teach history over a 4-year cycle.
No.
You might get 1, maybe 2 years of world history.
I mean, you're getting just enough to memorize a few names and dates.
Right. To be passingly familiar with like the biggest points of things that have happened. So when we looked at traditional history curriculum, there's a lot of gaps, there are a lot of holes between what happens. You don't get those threads of connection throughout the story. Even in AP history, which does a much better job than your standard traditional history curriculum, it's organized thematically. And so you get kind of these overarching themes that introduce each section. And so, you know, you might be talking about colonialism and the exploration of the world. And they do a fairly good job of explaining that concept, but you lose all of the connecting points. Because if you're not taking the time to study the history over that entire 4 years, what you don't see is that the rise of Christianity, which then leads into some idol worshiping, which then creates Islam, which then creates conflict around the Middle East, and you have the Crusades coming out of Europe in the medieval era that are centered on Jerusalem, and you have this trade network called the Silk Road that people have been traveling along and trading goods since the ancient era. And now all of a sudden Europeans are fighting here in the Crusades, and they're fighting against this, you know, new group of Muslim people
who are really good fighters.
By the way. And so now we've got this conflict. The Muslim people win these crusades ultimately and gain control over this area. And now you have this trade route that's been around since the ancient world.
Yeah.
Is no longer accessible to most European countries. There is a country
that you're risking your life at this point to get silk and spices
and tea and things that the world's kind of accustomed to being able to have. And so the vast majority of Europe is like, well, we're not going down that road. So let's see what happens if we go across the ocean. And so they start kind of exploring different ways to get to the places that they've always traded with.
They had a decent passing belief that the world was round.
Right.
People think they didn't. People still think that they didn't know that. And so they were like, so if we go that way, you eventually will end up over there. What they didn't know was that there was a continent blocking the path.
And so we have the settlement of North America there, but then you have people who are going down around the bottom of Africa, and so they're stopping in every place that they stop. They're like, we need to build a port here so that we can resupply our ships so that this can be a viable trade route. And so they start just by taking over little port cities. And then some European countries are kind of like, we can take over those little port cities. Maybe we can take over like the whole country. And then you have the beginnings of colonialism.
Right.
And so it's this offshoot of solving a trade problem that had gotten broken by religious disputes from trade routes that we had had since ancient times. And that story is, those connecting points, those threads are not generally taught in traditional history curriculum.
So what's missing for students is cause and effect. Right. Students hear, these bad people came and took these things, but they never find out why. And so they're like, these people are all evil. Maybe, but they were more or less motivated to do something for their good. Someone got trampled in it, that's a different story. However, the cause and effect comes alive when you study history over 4 years, which is why we're in the middle of writing a 4-year
because we
history curriculum.
Also, when you have in classical models, the idea of teaching classical history 4 years is not
a lot
uncommon.
Of homeschoolers
it's
teach
a very common homeschool
classical
philosophy. And that curriculum comes in two flavors. It comes in the flavor of all human beings are horrible and we should just maybe exterminate humans. And history is this wonderful product of these great people and we should be proud of what has come before us. And neither of those is actually telling the whole story.
No.
And we needed a history curriculum that had elements of both of those and kind of tried to get to the heart of what all was happening. And so, long story short, we wound up just writing our own.
Yes.
We had no intention of writing our own, but here we are. And so that is what has led to these.
Right.
Because we figured once we wrote it, we may as well share it.
I know.
Other people probably want to have the same thing.
Right. We can only teach 20 kids at a time.
Right.
And so we're really proud of this curriculum. We developed it over the course of 4 years. We workshopped it.
Yep. We've taught every single one of these
over the course
at
of
this
4 years.
Point.
Now we're just getting the research behind it and the pictures behind it.
Well, and we taught it through the entire cycle. We taught ancient, we taught medieval, we taught early modern, we taught modern. We turned over what we taught to the next generation and let them flavor it and give it their voice. Because, I mean, I think I'm interesting. I'm not sure that the teenagers agree. And so we brought in Andrea's daughter,
Miss Jordan,
and some of her friends, and let them kind of take what we had and massage it. And then we've kind of taken it back and made sure that everything's got continuity and flows. And so it's I wouldn't say it's written how the students think, but it's written in a voice that the kids tend to get and catch on to. So it's not just a good I've been told it's a lot of information. It's not just a good curriculum with all the information, but it's a good curriculum with all the information that is relatable. Right.
So that is our history curriculum. Ancient history will be done soon, and then we're going to go right into medieval.
And so that brings me back to this book. So this book is intended to be read at the start of any of the 4 years. In theory, if you have a student who really just wants to study history for 1 year and they just want to study modern history, I mean, you're going to be missing some context. But you could certainly pick up the modern history. You're still going to start with this.
I mean, honestly, if you think about kids like my daughter who, I think junior year, in addition to doing world history, wanted to study Scottish history because there's some Scottish in the family. This just teaches you how to go ahead and research an independent history journey.
And why? And why you want to look at history and how to critically evaluate sources and what sources might be good and what sources maybe you need to find another one that verifies that and why. And why you need to have that kind of media literacy and why there are some sources that we trust more than others. And it's not saying that there are any sources that you just should never look at ever, but there are some sources that you kind of need to go get some backup collaboration on you can't just trust what they're saying wholesale. And so I feel like that media literacy is kind of important right now.
So CheesePress,
whether it's history or not,
CheesePress has several other things still happening.
Right.
Right now, and what's most important right now, because we're coming upon the Christmas season, is that we have a sci-fi author who has written an amazing sci-fi book, and he's a homeschool dad, and this book was really written by him and his children
in collaboration with his
playing
kids.
Games at night, playing make-believe at night, making up these characters, and it's really fascinating. And I was on Reddit Homeschooling yesterday, but somebody was like, we're giving away books that are clean, wholesome books that kids can read. And I was like, I have one of those.
Right.
So if you're looking for something good, clean,
it's
wholesome,
fun and
family,
fast-paced. It's also fun and fast-paced.
And not derpy.
Right.
Not derpy at all. This was a really good book. And I would really love for people to put this on their Christmas list. It's Explorer 2000, Book 1, Lost in Taldish Sector by J.B. Stevens. And he is 3/4 of the way through book 2.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got about 5 books in his head.
Yeah.
So I want him to finish writing them.
Yep.
And so selling his books would make him finish writing them.
Indeed.
He's got the best kids. And they've
had
done
so
this
much
journey
fun
together.
They have had so much fun putting this together.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we also have this other one.
So this is the first of, I think, 5 books.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with a pet peeve of mine, because people are like, how do I homeschool kindergarten? And I'm like, you just take care of your kindergartner. You just teach them.
You let them play. You take them with you. You talk about doing math in the grocery store. And you talk about the colors of the sky. You talk about the things you see.
And they're like, no, I need a list. And I'm like,
okay, we'll give you a list.
Okay, fine. And so what this is Kindergarten Homeschool Portfolio, and 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and I think 4th are written. We just haven't had time to lay them out yet. But basically what this book is a portfolio. So as you teach your kindergartner the things they need to know, you immortalize it here. And at the end of the year, you have proof of everything you've taught them. Because, I mean, student photo, things like that, scrapbooky, right? And then,
so we've got a list of goals,
your
things that your
kindergarten
target
goals,
points.
And the dates. You can put down the date when they reach these milestones. Recognizes letters of the alphabet, basic addition and subtraction, things like that. We have pages. We have academic goals. We have social goals. We have motor goals. We have life skills. And then we have like nursery rhymes. Here's some nursery rhymes that these kids should know. And then we even have space for you to
add your own.
We have story time. We have all the kindergarten appropriate storybooks here that
read aloud to your child.
So I read the story to my child. Here's a date my child learned Waiting is Not Easy by Mo Willems.
So you pretty much just gathered all the information that you wish you had, or information that people could compile, but to save them time and effort, you just collected it and put it in one place.
Yep, and then they just have to
also gave lines
and
to add your own
space to add your own. And so at the end of the year, they'll know when the child learned this or when the child read this, and things like that. And then we have learning to read, and then books that would be great for children to read themselves versus reading to them, like Llama Llama or Sheep in a Jeep, or Dr. Seuss books, and then penmanship. So like it just builds. And of course you wouldn't do this in order. You would, as you taught kids things, you would go, okay, here's the page for that. And so I wouldn't teach them penmanship in this, but I teach them penmanship, and I'm like, you know what? Your S's look good. Let's go put your S's down in your portfolio book. So that's how this is supposed to be used. Spelling checklist, math skills, And then there's like
field trip reports.
Yeah, field trip reports. Social studies highlights, places to put pictures. So at the end of the day, this becomes a yearbook. Yeah. Honestly.
So in general,
for your child,
CheesePress is like a resource
yes,
center
for homeschoolers.
Mm-hmm. So largely what we are developing is educational resources.
And this was workshopped by several parents who like, add this, add that. And we even on our website have the ability for you to customize it and say, hey, but my child does this. Can you put these pages in? So we can make these books. I'm sorry?
Want to talk about your website?
Do we want to talk about what?
Your website.
Oh,
you just mentioned
sure. It's CheesePressPublishing.com.
Mm-hmm. And you can customize this book should there be specific things that you need.
All of our books are available on Amazon. There are links to all of that from our website. Some of them, like that one, are customizable on our website. So the one that we just showed you is available on Amazon, or you can request pages that you prefer.
Yeah, because we have some extra special pages in there.
We do.
Yeah.
Some that might not apply to everybody. But then also, if you see the list of
some people ask for Bible pages and things like that. Is that what's
I think that there's
those are options.
There are a variety of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely religious content that you could add to a custom version. And I feel like there are other specialty things.
I don't remember, but yes.
I think theater's one of them.
Yes.
Because not everybody's doing theater with their kindergartner, but we know people who do. So things like this stuff that's a little more specialty, that's all in the customization thing. And if you have something that you and your kindergartner might do that you don't see on the website, we're happy to generate a page for that. So I feel like we kind of jumped ahead, though, because at the beginning we were supposed to introduce ourselves. We got a little too excited. We gave our names.
Okay.
We got a little too excited about CheesePress.
So
who are you?
I'm Miss Andrea. And so what I do at CheesePress, honestly...
No, who are you?
My name is Andrea. And I am... at this point, like a 22-year veteran in homeschooling. Veteran means you've graduated your homeschoolers. I started homeschooling in, I think, 2002, a second grader and a fourth grader. And I graduated my youngest at age 16 in 2013.
That's the one that writes for us.
I take homeschooling real seriously. So if you're like, how do we get into college? Can we get into college? Can we do this? Can we do that? I got plans. Like, I know how to get there. Especially these days with the students that we encounter, I want everybody accelerated and dual enrolled by 11th grade because that saves you 2 years of college money.
Yeah.
First of all. And so...
get your core out of the way.
The curriculum was kind of born out of my head because I learned history horribly, especially before 9th grade. I went to Catholic school and we transcribed from the history book for penmanship reasons.
That's so horrible.
It was boring. It was horrible. Now, when I got to 9th grade, I had some teachers who were characters, and so that made it more interesting. But when it came time to homeschool my kids, I was afraid of history. And I had this wonderful Kingfisher history encyclopedia, which kind of covered history from the beginning to the end. It was meant to be consumed over a 4-year period because that's really common in homeschooling. But I signed my kids up for a homeschool program that taught history through the arts, which was kind of really awesome. And we incorporate arts very much as well. And my point was, the whole idea was kind of born out of my idea that history could not be boring, that it is a story that should be told. Right? Yeah. So that idea came out of this noggin. I write a good amount of the history. I outline a good amount of the history. Actually, she does a lot of the outlining, and then I go in deep.
Right. Because we've discovered that I have absolutely zero concept of appropriate grade level reading material.
She'd be real high level. Yes. And I have a way of breaking things down and making it more bite-sized.
You and Jordan write in a way that is way more approachable than the way that I write. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I am not approachable to a middle school or even an early high school student.
When I met Mare some time ago, she'd be talking and I'd be like, oh, that's what that meant. She had me in a dictionary for a while till I got used to her. And that's now, and here's the thing: I have an amazing vocabulary. Right. I have Latin and Greek grounding, and I still had to look stuff up.
The real secret is every once in a while I'll pull something out of whole thin air, and it won't actually be a word, but it'll sound right in the context. So that may happen too.
A little bit of yes. So basically, I'm kind of where the whole idea of the history came from, and so what do you do?
So kind of going back to that and an introduction to me and how I got here and how we got here in general. We met after I had both of my children on the board of a community theater.
Correct.
And so we served there for quite a while, and we were at a theater event. And understand that my train of thought was never to homeschool my children.
Mine neither.
We are what you would call accidental homeschoolers.
Right.
There are generally two types of homeschoolers. There are people who believe they knew from the very beginning, before they had children, I am homeschooling my children. They have a great deal of confidence in their ability to teach their children. They may have been homeschooled themselves. For whatever their reason is, we want to travel the world, and I want my children to learn in, countries that we're visiting, or I am just not comfortable with the way that traditional education happens. I don't want my kid trapped in a classroom for 8 hours a day. Whatever it is. There are some people who start out knowing from the word go that they are going to homeschool. And then there's the rest of us. We're
who come to their friends crying.
Yep.
It is not going well. My child's not okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we are both accidental homeschoolers. I had picked out my children's perfect curriculum before either one of them were born. And anybody who has children understands immediately what is wrong with that statement.
Oh, no, I thought my kids were going to Catholic school or private school like I did through grade 8. And then I found out what it costs.
So we narrowed it down to 2 schools, but ultimately we decided that my kids were going to go to Atlanta International School. Which curriculum-wise, I love what they're doing. They have the most amazing curriculum. It's 50-50 immersion, and what that means is every other day, all of your subjects are being taught in a different language. So on your A day, everything's being taught in English. On your B day, everything is being taught in whatever your target is. That could be Spanish, that could be French, that could be German, that whatever. So my kids were in the German program. This worked amazingly well for my oldest child. His brain worked in that environment, but he figured out how to game that system.
Yeah. And so long story short, he sure did.
Yeah. By Christmas of 2nd grade, he was gaming that system, and I'm sitting here like, sir, I'm spending way too much money on this education for you to be gaming the system. And so against my better judgment, we sent him back for 3rd grade. But by October, other things in the classroom had happened. Ultimately, we mutually separated from that school. And part of that process involved my child being independently tested, and comes back and his standardized test scores are running on average at 7th grade as a 3rd grader. And I'm like, I cannot do that in good conscience to any public school teacher. They've got enough on their plate. They don't need this chaos brought into their world. What am I going to do with this child? And I had a lot of friends who had been homeschooling for years, many of whom fit in that first category. They knew from day one they were going to be homeschooled.
They were homeschooled.
And they're like, come on, I got you. We're going to get this figured out. I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And so I started homeschooling my oldest child. My youngest child has as most children in families that have two children will know, my youngest child has the exact opposite personality of my oldest child. Mm-hmm. He did not do well in that environment. He spent kindergarten at Atlanta International School in the hallway crying, saying, "That's not my classroom. That's not my class. Or, that is my classroom over here, not that one. And those are my teachers, not that."
He didn't like
that going back and forth thing, switching back and forth between languages and classrooms and teachers and all that did not work for him.
My son wouldn't have been able to handle that either.
Right. It is not an environment for everybody. And that is why I say, knowing what I know now, that I would have more tailored things to my children in particular. And
once you knew them.
Like, you have to know your children before making educational decisions. And so we brought him closer to home, put him in a more traditional environment. That worked great until October of third grade. Turns out the problem that he had happened to be dyslexia, but the third grade teacher who had him that year, "I've never seen anything like this in my life. I don't understand what the problem is." Dealing with some schoolwork avoidance and things like that were disrupting the classroom. And so we separated from that schooling environment, and my child is in the car crying, "Why don't they love me anymore? What did I do wrong? I want to stay home like my brother does."
I think that's the weekend you and I had the conversation.
I think that's the weekend that we had the conversation.
Because I didn't even know that you were homeschooling, JJ. I had been done homeschooling.
Right.
I had counseled other people through homeschooling, and I was taking a break, living my best life in community theater.
And so then we have this conversation where she was talking about her kids and their trajectory and how she had really, once her kids graduated, she really wanted to continue being a homeschool advisor and helping kids get into college, that she had done that with several of her kids' friends, and she just had a heart and a passion for making sure that kids were prepared to get out into the real world when they were done with their homeschooling journey, and just supporting them and seeing places where her kids' friends had either had gaps or they weren't satisfied with their schooling, and how could we help address that?
Yeah, that's what I was running into at that point in time, because homeschoolers find each other. And so my kids had homeschooled friends who hadn't come up in the same program my kids had come up in. And they had serious history gaps. They had serious science gaps. I've always known there were math gaps.
Right.
But they had serious...
Because math phobia is real.
They had serious social gaps.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about socialization. I'm talking, we're sitting around talking and we're like, MASH, that TV show. And they're like, "What's a MASH?"
Right.
Just...
enculturation kind of things.
Yeah, they were just like, "I don't know what that is."
Understanding what people are talking about around you.
So I started talking to 20-somethings who had homeschooled, and I was like, "Oh no."
And so as we're having this conversation at this theater event, she's like, "Yeah, maybe one day, I think maybe I'd like to get back into that." And I'm like, "How about today's good? I think today works."
Yeah, I think we spent that next January in the library.
Why don't we do that now?
Yeah.
Because my children need what you're offering. And here we are.
Right.
That's how we got to where we are now. So for CheesePress, I'm largely in charge of, I kind of direct the overarching outline of things. I have an enormous vault of completely useless knowledge in my head. Great on trivia teams. But so a lot of times I'll be like, "This needs to come after this," or "We forgot this thing over here." Of course, also then my brain will completely forget to put Catherine the Great into a lesson. And how do you go through history and not discuss Catherine the Great? It's wild. And I'm like, wait, we need to go back and add that. And that might happen at the midnight hour. But a lot of times I can see like, oh, there's a missing thing here. Or I'll be like, that doesn't sound correct. Let's go run down that rabbit trail. And sometimes it may just be that what I learned many years ago is now we know to be different.
Right.
Because that's one of the things.
That's where the girls came in that helped us write it, because they're younger than us. History constantly changes. New evidence constantly happens. The victor may not be 100% telling the story anymore.
Well, and there are things like, especially when you're dealing in ancient history, every day we're having new discoveries and we're finding new things. There's stuff that we wrote in the first book that, as we've kind of gone back this year, and we've gone back and we're like, oh wait, they did something last September that changes what
ancient history is impossible.
Knew 3 months ago. And so we kind of have to put that in there, and we will.
Ancient history will get rewritten every 4 years.
Right.
It has to be.
It has to be.
Even medieval history's got to get rewritten every 4 years.
Yeah.
Well, it all does. Maybe not early modern, but definitely modern. Yeah. Because new history is always happening. And then, like, new historical facts are getting unredacted.
Yeah.
As presidencies age.
So. And so generally when we write our curriculum, so like we get to modern.
Sorry, the nerd is going to come out because we're talking about history, and this is just what's going to happen.
When we get to modern, we generally stop around the 90s. Right now, we were stopping at the 80s.
We stopped at the 80s.
So when we
taught
first
it 4 years ago.
When we taught American history 5 years ago, we stopped at the 80s. This time we stopped at the 90s. But our goal is to not try and teach history when so much of the documentation of it is still redacted. It needs to be released into the public so we've got the clear picture so we can fully analyze.
Because with that, all you have are opinions.
Yeah. Like it's hearsay, it's gossip, it's not documented record.
It's like you have to be to a point where the government has released the information to the public before you can discuss it.
Right.
And we have all this material, we have all this video footage, but we'll get the full story when the government has released the information. So yeah.
Oh, the other thing that I do with CheesePress is I am the one that is responsible for how everything looks. I do the layout. I make the pretty. I spent a couple of years at an advertising school called the Creative Circus. And so I do a lot of our image work.
Yep.
So those are the things that I do for CheesePress.
So yeah, that's kind of what we do for CheesePress. We have the idea. We have the one that makes it look gorgeous. And then we have a team that makes sure that it's AP level and make sure that it's relatable and maybe a little humorous.
Yeah, we do hit all of the topics that the College Board sets out in World History AP stuff. All of that's in there.
So, I mean,
you get more than that, but it does cover those topics.
If you can get into an AP test, our curriculum is going to help you prepare for it. Okay, so where did the name CheesePress come from?
Where did it come from?
We teach kids. And
kids are wild. Kids are so wild.
Year 1, when we're teaching American history, it was January?
Probably thereabouts.
It was fall. It was October, November. And we were teaching Chicago World Exposition. So we were just starting to get into industrialization.
So understand one of the things one of the values that we have, one of the things that we try to write into our history curriculum is we want as much firsthand documentation as we can get. We are very much primary source. If there is something written at that time period and we have accessibility, if we have the ability to access it, we want to read as much primary source material as we can.
Right. So we were teaching the exposition where all the countries were coming together and going, look what we made, because everybody was starting to make really cool stuff. And so there was this huge fair in Chicago, and it was the second exposition.
Yeah.
But this was a 1910 Chicago exposition, and they had made a printing press. They had also made a cheese press. And so
we're going to get to that in a minute.
And so what was happening at this exposition was one of the first things you encounter when you get there is this printing press. And they were actively printing pamphlets. about the exposition.
So this was intended for children who were visiting. Mm-hmm. So they're at the World's Fair. The kids come up to this printing press and they get to see it run. And in real time, your first on-demand printing, mm-hmm. they print out this little booklet that explains mm-hmm. all the stuff that the kids can see at the World's Fair.
So it's a guide that they literally just take through with them. Right.
So mm-hmm. each kid comes up and they get their little guidebook and they can take it around and they can learn about all the stuff that they're seeing.
We thought that booklet was wild. So
we thought it was a great
idea. 1910. It was. And so they're telling you about all the different exhibitions, and the Asian exhibitions, they called them Chinesed.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
And at one point, the kid read that word too many times and just threw the booklet, and they were like, "We're done."
That's when they were done with it. Mm-hmm.
But so we're reading through, and it's taking them through, and they're like, "And here's the cheese press."
So to set the stage, we have mm-hmm. brought her daughter in for mm-hmm. story time, mm-hmm. and we did not actually vet this material
because it was
the way that we should have.
Look, it was source material. Source material is
and
what
it was designed for children,
right?
So surely it won't be that bad. And so her daughter comes in and she starts reading this aloud, story time style, to our classroom of kids. Mm-hmm. And first off, they discover very quickly that it's not that interesting. It's actually really boring.
It's a little boring and a lot racist.
Which did result in the book flying across the room, mm-hmm. probably about a third of the way in.
Yes, it did.
Mm-hmm.
So they kept bringing it. They really were very focused on this cheese press. So they're reading, and the cheese press, da 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 da, and the cheese press. Because every time she got to the word cheese press, the kids would chime in.
It was mentioned about 3 or 4 times, mm-hmm. and then one student
just said
the cheese press.
And so every time they heard
they started grouping it. It was a couple of students, and then mm-hmm. by the time it was done, everybody in the class, mm-hmm. she started saying it. They were all the cheese press.
And then I think like the 10th time they saw the word Chinese, they were like, "We're not reading anymore. We get the point.
We're done.
It was done.
We're good."
And so a couple of months later, when we were like, well, no, it was the next year.
It was the next year.
A year later.
But so here's the thing. The cheese press kept coming up throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, and because when these kids get a catchphrase, they don't let it go. We're not going to mention some of their catchphrases. But that one was...
Because they kept getting wilder year after year.
Well, finger licking good. Anyway, so...
We did entrepreneurship as a class. Mm-hmm. We were discussing slogans. Mm-hmm. That slogan should not be applied to everything.
Yeah, let's just keep it with KFC.
These children applied it to
everything was finger looking good.
Including the Black Plague, which is really disturbing.
Yes.
But yeah.
So a year later, when I think it was 2020... because we were mostly dealing with each other and everyone on Zoom, and I was on the phone. I'm like, we decided we've got 2 years of curriculum right now. We should probably immortalize this.
We should probably publish it. We've written the thing. Mm-hmm. We should share the thing.
And so we're going through names and like, no, things the kids have said. And so I don't remember what the kids were saying that year, but we went through that. And then I was like, cheese press. And you were like, I don't know. And I went to my family and I'm like, cheese press? And they're like, cheese? I'm like, yeah. And then we agreed. We did. And the name of our company became CheesePress. Now, besides this wonderful stack of books we have here, which will be this tall by the end of the year.
Indeed.
We also have a YouTube channel.
We do.
And we publish historical content.
We are CheesePressEducation over mm-hmm. there on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. For the last year, we decided to do Today in History, and I think the 12th would make day 365 days that we have done Today in History every day, not including also doing Black History Month on top of that, and then also out of spite,
that was such a spite move.
History Month on top of that. So we're going to stop Today in History on the 12th of November to make room for other shorts, because those were done in a shorts format. But
and one short a day really is plenty.
We've been making history content for the last couple of years to go along with the history books that we're putting out, so children have some more bits of information given to them in a more interactive way. But I was going to say something about why we decided to do videos.
Oh,
take it.
Yeah. So because all of this is, we're deciding we're going to publish the things. Mm-hmm. All of this is happening during the pandemic. We're trying to teach classes on Zoom. And we keep trying to find videos that are appropriate to show in our class. And so we'll find this amazing video about the 5 dynasties in China, and we're showing it, and then we get to this spot where all of a sudden it just veers off into some kind of wild innuendo or inappropriate comment. And you don't really necessarily recognize that it's an inappropriate comment until you're staring into the soul of a 12-year-old on Zoom. At which point,
because we review the videos the night before, and we're like, this is fine.
We learned,
this is good history.
We learned from that booklet the first year that we always vet everything we show in the classroom, because you never know what might show up in there. And sometimes language would get missed, because I use
as an adult, all the language. You hear language and you're like, whatever. But then when a child is next to you, or when a child is on Zoom, when it feels like their eyeballs are this far from yours, and a word is said and the child's eye goes like this, you're like,
oh, missed that one.
Man. And so we felt that we needed to be able to create historical content that anyone could consume.
Right.
And not just, because
most of
the historical content that we liked was written for AP and college students.
Right.
And so a little innuendo, whatever.
Right.
Not age 12. At least, and look, what parents let their kids watch, because parents do let their kids watch these videos.
Yeah.
It's fine with me.
Right.
But I'm not bringing that to your child.
Right.
We're not doing that.
Right. So that's why we started making historical content from the beginning.
Right.
For YouTube. That's why we started making videos. We wanted to have them in the class. We wanted to be able to, figure that out. And yeah. So now we're on social media, and here we are. And it's terrifying. I don't watch myself on any of these things.
Oh, I do. But I've been on YouTube since, I don't know.
More power to you. I hate videos of myself.
I was a blogger. I was a homeschool blogger from 2005 until blogging died. And so I transitioned into YouTube very reluctantly. But I have videos where I look like my daughter. I've been on YouTube so long. Mayor's oldest, I showed a video of me the first year, and he freaked out because he thought it was my daughter.
Yeah.
My daughter's 28, and I think I was about 40 when I started doing that. And he just was very weirded out. It's like, you guys are related, actually.
For anybody who had any doubt.
Yeah. I used to have eyebrows once.
Oh.
So I did. And so that means one day she'll have less. Yeah. And so so that's the story of CheesePress. We are here. We love history. We're nerds, and we try to have fun with it.
We do.
You have anything fun for us history-wise?
I suppose.
Blink, blink. So we'll continue doing these twitchy things, and we're gonna have some fun history game things and things of that coming up in the future. So if you want to come back and join us, be aware that we'll be doing those kinds of things. What you got?
Where was the Declaration of Independence signed?
In a hall in Pennsylvania.
At the bottom.
Okay.
Oh, I can't tell that one.
I got a corny one.
Okay. Go for it.
What kind of music did the Pilgrims like?
Oh, I did just read that one.
Pilgrims still like music.
You're not wrong, but
there shall be no dancing. What was it?
Plymouth Rock.
Grown.
What do Alexander the Great and Kermit the Frog have in common?
I've heard this one, but I can't remember.
Because I read it to you the other day.
Oh, okay.
The same middle name.
Oh.
Wait, Kermit the Frog.
Alexander the Great.
I got one.
Okay.
How did Benjamin Franklin feel when he discovered electricity?
Shocked.
We're on the same page.
Yes.
And yes,
You're shocked.
Why did the knight always carry a pencil and paper?
I don't know.
So he could draw his sword.
I would have sent him away.
All right, I'm done now.
Okay. So yeah, we have a lot of fun things coming up. All of our streams will eventually, at least in some parts, get onto our YouTube channel. Our CheesePress YouTube channel is, you just said it, didn't you?
CheesePressEducation.
And our amazing Shalance has some other social media things that we'll be doing. What?
It was just a joke, and I should have stopped reading. But I went to another page, and it was like, how was the Roman Empire cut in half?
Oh, I've seen this before, so I'm not going to answer.
I know what the result was, but how were they cut in half?
Wait, no, I don't understand it.
Say it out loud. I'll understand it.
It's with a pair of Caesars.
Oh.
I was like, a pair.
Yeah.
Of Caesars.
So Caesar, probably Julius Caesar and Caesar Augustus.
Oh no. Okay, I think I'm figuring it out slowly. I got it and I lost it and I got it again.
Make that one make sense. The pair of Caesars.
It's a pun on the word scissor.
That's it?
But wasn't there two? There was two. Julius Caesar.
I don't think it was Julius. I don't think it was Julius. That was
Julius Caesar was one of the last Roman emperors before he got.
This is showing why we need history.
Killed.
Need to learn history because I don't know. So you should follow CheesePress.
I mean, but here's the thing, and this is why it really is just the pun on the word scissors, because they weren't necessarily Caesars at that point. They were more Roman emperors. The form of government had just changed by then. But it was Arcadius and Honorius.
See, look at you.
Were the ones that were. It was the two sons, and each of them got given a part.
Yes.
See, she knows her stuff. That was 10.
Well, I had to look it up because I don't remember actual names at that point. I just know Caesar's way early in the process.
So here's the thing.
This was way later.
Here's the thing when it comes to studying history.
This is why you don't need to memorize names and dates.
You don't need to memorize.
Right now, she's talking about
anything.
The phone.
You need to be familiar with the story, so that when someone says something, you can go, wait, I know that story. Let me get the details. Oh, this is not a good source. Oh, this is a good source. This is how we deal with history, generally.
The whole
critical thinking.
Prior to the invention of the internet, it may have been kind of important to know names and to know dates. And now there's just no point in that being your focus. The focus needs to be the critical thinking. The focus needs to be the analysis. You can always find the names and the dates.
And how governments work. It needs to be about the concepts.
Right.
And then the timeline of how things flowed.
Right.
But like
cause and effect.
Names and dates, you're not going to get names and dates to memorize in our books. You're going to get told the story, and then you're going to be given instructions to go investigate further.
So tell everyone, why do they need to subscribe or follow the Twitch of CheesePress?
Because we're adorable.
In addition to...
Oh.
Because we're going to keep creating educational content that might tell you something you want to learn.
We also include content seasonally, as is necessary, on homeschooling in particular. By the way,
on that note,
if you have a high school senior, their college application is due.
Now.
It used to be that they should be out by Thanksgiving, Christmas at the latest.
Everything's been moved up.
What is it called?
Early action.
Early action open enrollment started in October.
Yep.
I've got kids with acceptance letters and scholarships back already. That money's going to be gone.
Yep.
Real soon.
Don't believe the deadlines, because you're not eligible for the money if you wait until the deadline.
Yeah, if you apply after December, the money's gone. Also, if you have a junior, we need to start working on next year's portfolio and applications in January.
Yep.
This is my expertise. So
it's not just about getting kids into school. It's about getting the money to pay for the school.
And making sure that they have the skills to keep them in school.
And making sure that not just to keep them in schools, but they can keep the scholarships. Because if you're on scholarship, you have to maintain a certain GPA.
Yes, you do.
So you have to have a skill set you're gonna be able to thrive in that environment.
I've got tips for that too.
Mm-hmm. So you're trying to make the job easier for the parents.
Absolutely. And honestly, I help 2 to 4 homeschoolers a year. At this juncture, I could help 10 or 20. At that, I have to draw a line.
Right.
Because exhaustion. And my point was, I help just as many public school students as I help homeschool students. It's the same process.
Mm-hmm.
What public school students lack is the freedom of curriculum, but I make up for that in other ways with like resumes and things like that to show off their individuality.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't just help homeschoolers. I love helping homeschoolers. But if you're trying to get in school and you're struggling and your guidance counselor is telling you, no, I can't get you into Columbia, I can get you into UGA only, check me out. Contact me. So thank you so much for joining us. And
where can they find you?
You can find us here. You can find us at CheesePressPublishing.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can find us at CheesePressEducation on YouTube. We'll give those to you later.
Mm-hmm. So,
until next time.
Until next time. Why are you making that face?